Welcome to the SoTL Scholars information session. I'm excited to see everyone here. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jenny, and I am the Senior Educational Developer Scholarship of Teaching and Learning at our Center for Teaching Excellence and Innovation. And I have the great privilege of overseeing the program, chairing the adjudication committee, and working closely with SoTL Scholars through their projects. I am joined by Tommy, our wonderful director, who has also been supporting the program. And we wanted to take this time today to share some important information about the program and application process. We are recording the session for folks who couldn't make it, so I'm just going to ask that everyone save their questions until the end or put your questions in the chat. And once the recording has stopped, we will get to them and try our best to answer them. And the slides and recording will be posted to our webpage and emailed out to everyone. So I will try to speed through these slides so we can get to your questions as quickly as possible. I know a couple of people just joined, so I'm just going to reiterate that reminder. If you could just save your questions until the end or put them in the chat just while we've got the recording going on, that would be great. All right. So today we will go over some key information about the program, important dates, eligibility to apply, eligible projects, the funding ceiling, budget guidelines, program approval, requirements for SoTL Scholars, and the application process. And we'll, of course, leave time at the end for questions. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land on which I'm speaking to you today. I live closest to our Steeles campus, which sits on treaty land of the Toronto Purchase of 1787, also known as Treaty 13, which is the land of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee, and the Wendat peoples. Specifically, I live on land that sits under the Williams Treaties, which are land cession treaties signed in 1923 by 7 Anishinaabe First Nations. And many of the signatories were forced to sign and lost their hunting and fishing rights. As we will be talking about research today, I think it is especially important that we pause to reflect on how people's access to, belonging on, and histories on/with land and spaces impacts their ability and capacity to participate in research, to lead research on their own terms, and to have their voices be acknowledged, heard, and represented in research. So I hope we will also reflect on how research can be conducted in slow, sustainable ways that are relational to and not extractive of both people and land. Here's a quick overview before we get into details on each point. So we launched the SoTL Scholars program last year, which is very exciting for us and for, I think, faculty. And the aim is to foster scholarly activity at Yorkville University and Toronto Film School. And we're excited that calls are now open for applications again. For the second cohort, this 2-year fellowship will run from August 2026 to August 2028. Interested instructors and faculty must apply and will be evaluated on both their proposed projects and demonstrated commitment to scholarly reflective teaching. And I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly, but also later when we go over the application requirements. SoTL Scholars are expected to participate in a monthly community of practice in their first year and contribute to knowledge mobilization activities that will help bring evidence-based, creative, and innovative practices to our faculty. And we at the CTEI will closely support scholars in conducting their projects and advise on things like budget, pacing, methods, ethics applications, etc. There will be up to 5 projects per cohort and up to $20,000 Canadian of funding per project. And what we really, really want to emphasize is that we don't expect applicants to be seasoned researchers with long CVs. This is not your typical research funding program where folks receive funding and then just go off to do their project. Those are great too. This is also a faculty development program centered on SoTL, involving commitments to the community and prioritizing teaching and learning through research. So if you have a curiosity about something that's been going on in your classroom, if you want to do research in community with colleagues, we encourage you to apply. You'll have opportunities to refine your project over the 2 years. 2 years is typically also, I think, a little bit longer than a lot of funding programs give recipients. So that time is there for folks to develop their projects and refine their ideas and so on. Some important dates: applications are already open. They will close on June 3rd. Between now and June 3rd, if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me by email, or put a question in the chat, and I'll get back to you ASAP. Sometimes I get questions like, when on June 3rd? I mean, if it was like June 3rd in the wee hours of the morning, June 4th, that's fine. But it's like that's fine. But I hope everyone gets sleep. At the end of July, recipients will be notified and announced, and at the end of August, the cohort will have their onboarding and orientation meeting, and then the monthly community of practice meetings will begin in September, and we'll find a time that works for everyone. Who's eligible to apply? Full and part-time faculty members and instructors in all programs offered by Yorkville University and Toronto Film School are eligible to apply. Part-time faculty members are eligible if they have taught for at least 2 terms and are scheduled to teach for at least 1 upcoming term, since the project must examine teaching and learning here at Yorkville University and or Toronto Film School. And we know a lot of our faculty also teach at other institutions, but the purpose of this program is to foster scholarly teaching within our teaching and learning contexts, so that our research can directly benefit and enhance the experiences of teachers and learners here. So that's why that's the eligibility criteria. Proposed projects. Given that this is a program focused on SoTL, eligible projects must be Scholarship of Teaching and Learning projects. So based on definitions of SoTL, projects must purposefully examine teaching and learning to address a challenge and or opportunity here, as previously mentioned. Be informed by existing research on teaching and learning, including critical, creative, and affective dimensions and interventions. My slides are here, so I'm just looking up to the side. Aim to enhance teaching and or learning experiences and or outcomes, and be shared with and beyond the Yorkville and Toronto Film School communities. And this could be really it's not just limited to traditional publication or conference presentations. We're also really interested in supporting critical and creative knowledge mobilization in the forms of exhibitions or performances. And these are things, of course, we will talk about as a group in the community of practice, but also one-on-one, come up with ways that work for your project. And I will actually put in the chat now, for folks who maybe haven't seen this. This is just a link to last year's SoTL Scholars and projects. Okay, funding. The funding ceiling is $20,000 Canadian per project, and applicants must prepare an itemized budget. We don't expect you to have everything figured out, but you can consider your timeline, research activities, conferences that might support your work, how 1 or more research assistants might support your work, and factor those into your budget planning. The CTEI might recommend partial funding of a project or funding for only some components of a project. We do have budget guidelines to support the impactful and responsible use of funds. I'll put that link in the chat as well. All of these are in the application package that went out in the email, the initial call, but I'll also put that here so you can take a look while we're going. We do have some budget guidelines that are specific to this program and differ from the Support for Scholarly Activities Fund, or SSAF, out of the Office of Academic Research, which some of you are probably familiar with. So some of our guidelines are different. I'll just highlight them now. First, we do expect that give or take a minimum of 50% of the project's proposed budget should go towards student research assistants' wages. And this is just because of the nature of Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. It's student-centered. We're trying to enhance student learning and outcomes and experiences. And we want to create opportunities for students to be active in that process, to develop themselves as researchers, and to ensure that their voices are amplified and represented. So those are some of the foundational values of our program, and that's why we have hopefully reflected them in our budget guidelines. Up to $3,500 can be used for responsible conference costs. Of course, conferences must be relevant and strategically chosen, and we'll help advise on that if you're not sure where to go, or if you're not sure about whether something is directly connected to your project. Always a conversation we can have. We also highly encourage scholars to invite and plan for their student research assistants to attend a local conference, ideally with you if possible, to provide them with the opportunity to engage in the research community. And we have some from our first cohort right now, they're bringing some of their students to conferences to co-present with them, and that's wonderful. That's what we really want to support and encourage. And lastly, we are very excited to also be able to offer scholars up to $1,000 on professional development for themselves that will meaningfully contribute to or advance their teaching and or research practices. So a PD stipend. And there are some other guidelines in the document that I've shared, including limitations on how the budget can be spent and the reimbursement processes. So take a look at that for more details. Some requirements. So for those who are selected, we do have some requirements. As previously mentioned, attending monthly community of practice meetings in the first year of the program. These meetings will be a great way for scholars to connect with one another, ask questions, share resources. And during those meetings, myself and my wonderful colleagues at the CTEI will be there at different times throughout the year to provide guidance on research, from research design to instrument creation to data collection to analysis and so on and so forth. And people also exchange knowledge and expertise as well. So we've got in our first cohort folks who are more experienced, folks who are less experienced, and they all learn from each other. And we have a great group in our first year. So we'll hopefully see that again in our second year. If applicable, SoTL Scholars must receive ethical clearance from the Yorkville University Research Ethics Board. The ethics approval application process, I know, is always very, can feel really like a lot of work. I was trying to find, can feel like a lot of work, but is a great check for, of course, things that we should all be considering when it comes to research design. So I hope that doesn't scare folks, but when we get there, we have lots of conversations about how to go through the application process. We'll talk as a group, we can talk one-on-one. So that's something you can kind of look forward to, but don't have to worry about just yet. Scholars are required to use their funding within a 2-year period, submit a project status report at the 1-year mark and at the end of the funding period, share back the research with our communities, and acknowledge Yorkville University and Toronto Film School directly in all knowledge mobilization activities. I feel so weird not stopping to be like, anyone have questions? Because I normally would, but again, we'll get to them at the end. Okay, so the application process. Applicants should review the information in the application package carefully before applying. So here's the full application package, just in case you don't have that handy with you, but that did go out in the initial email. Everything I've mentioned so far and will be mentioning is here. And there's a template for the itemized budget as well as the eligibility form. And I'll go over each of the required documents. There are 4 in total: your proposal, a narrative statement / letter of researcher intent, itemized budget form, and eligibility and program approval form. So I'll go over each of them one by one. The first one, the SoTL project proposal, should be no more than 3 pages, excluding references. I know this may seem short to some folks, but we encourage you to capture the essence of your project through the following sections: project purpose / goals, research questions, a brief overview of relevant context / literature, proposed methods, including a detailed timeline. Really important. It is a 2-year project, so we hope folks will kind of plan ahead for those 2 years, knowing that things might change, but doing the best as you can for now. anticipated impacts on teaching and learning here, as well as your dissemination plan, how you plan on sharing your findings here and with the broader community. The second document required is a narrative statement or letter of researcher intent that reflects your commitment to scholarly teaching and response to these questions. So we've noticed that typically funding applications ask for CVs or resumes, but as mentioned earlier, we don't expect applicants to have an extensive research background or CV. What we care more about is your passion for and commitment to teaching in ways that bring in research and reflection, and that takes into consideration student feedback, student experiences, etc. So we're not so much concerned with format or something sounding perfect and polished. We want to learn about you and what excites you about teaching and research. The third document is an itemized budget form. So like I said, please fill it out to the best of your ability based on your proposed project and follow the budget guidelines. And this last document is the eligibility and program approval form. So applicants must connect with their program head to confirm their eligibility and have their proposed projects approved. This is slightly different from last year's application process because at the end of last year, new institutional research policies were published that clarify that anyone conducting research here must receive program approval. So this just means that you have to share with your program head your proposed research. You can send them your proposal so that they can confirm research activities will not disrupt campus and learning activities. So given this, we recommend that folks share their proposals with their program heads a week before the application deadline, just so that they have time to review and approve. And you might also consider reaching out to your program head now, just to let them know to expect your proposal in the coming weeks. And I kind of mentioned this earlier, but you're not expected to have received ethics approval at this stage. If successful at that point, if applicable, you will have to apply for ethics approval, and I'll support you in that. So those are four documents. When you're ready, please submit via the application form. This is also linked in the application package. And just make sure to upload all of your required documents to a OneDrive folder and share the link in the Microsoft form where prompted, and just make sure that you've given me access to view everything. If there are issues, I'll just email, of course, to get them sorted out, but to the best of your ability, that would be great. I'm almost done, and then we'll get to questions. Oops. Let me go back, because this is very important. A very important note, I just wanted to add this note. We encourage you to be creative and personal and to study something that is maybe even niche and important to you. So SoTL projects are typically small scale and qualitative, and the purpose of SoTL is not to make broad, grand generalizations about teaching and learning, but rather to critically understand a local context, tell a story, and help faculty connect with other practitioners. We encourage faculty to experiment, to explore non-traditional methods of research, including arts-based research methods, which can be really powerful in building relationships with students and eliciting rich reflections from students. We also encourage scholars to consider creative and critical outlets for knowledge mobilization. So like I said earlier, not just peer-reviewed journal publication or conference presentation, but creative exhibitions, performances, other creative products, reflective articles submitted to practice-focused journals. We can dream vision together. This isn't about me, but really quickly, I teach a research course at U of T, and I always share this quote at the bottom right-hand corner of this slide. I always share this quote. I found it online years ago. I know it's a bit cheesy, but I think it's important for even the most experienced researchers to hear. And it's, you all have a little bit of, I want to save the world in you. That's why you're here. I want you to know that it's okay if you only save one person, and it's okay if that person is you. So all that to say is I encourage folks to do the research that would have made their lives better when they were students. So on that note, what questions I'll stop the recording